You've got the right crops, the perfect soil, and cooler weather finally on your side. But winter can quietly sabotage a garden without warning. From dry spells in Florida to soggy beds out west, these hidden mistakes are what really kill winter growth. And most gardeners never notice them until it's too late. Winter gardening sounds simple. No bugs, no heat, no hurricanes. But in Zone 9, winter brings its own set of traps that can quietly shut down plant growth. Across this zone, conditions change completely from one coast to the other. In Florida, winter is the dry season. The rain stops, humidity drops, and sandy soil can dry out in a day. Meanwhile, Zone 9 gardeners in California and parts of Texas face the opposite challenge: heavy winter rains that leave beds soggy and roots gasping for air. Those differences fool plenty of gardeners into thinking they're doing everything right. The truth is, winter success depends on noticing the subtle shifts that summer habits hide. This video breaks down the most common winter garden mistakes that quietly kill growth, even when your crops look healthy on the surface. From watering and soil care to sunlight, feeding, and protection from cold snaps. It's all about knowing what your garden actually needs right now, not what worked a few months ago. Mistake number 1. Watering like it's still summer. Zone 9 covers some wildly different climates, and that catches gardeners off guard every winter. In places like California and southern Texas, winter rains soak the soil for weeks on end. But here in Florida, the pattern flips completely. This is the dry season. Our months of blue skies, low humidity, and almost no rain at all. It's one of the biggest traps for new gardeners. After a long summer of storms and soggy ground, it feels natural to back off on watering once the air turns cool. The problem is, your garden doesn't get the daily downpours anymore. The top inch of soil dries fast, and sandy beds lose moisture even faster. That slow dehydration can stop cool season crops like lettuce, carrots, and mustard in their tracks. They don't wilt the way summer plants do. They simply stall, turning pale and bitter while their roots shrink back. It looks like a nutrient issue, but 9 times out of 10, it's dryness. The fix is simple. Check soil by hand every day or two. When the top inch feels dry, give the bed a deep soak that reaches the root zone. Early morning watering helps minimize evaporation and keeps leaves dry overnight. A light mulch of compost or shredded leaves can help hold moisture without trapping heat. If you're gardening on the other end of Zone 9, say in California, the danger reverses. Constant rain can drown roots or wash away nutrients. There, raised beds or slightly mounded rows give roots the drainage they need to breathe. The goal is balance, not too dry, not too soggy. Zone numbers only tell you how cold it gets, not how much it rains. That's why watering habits have to change with your sky, not your zip code. Learn that early, and you'll avoid the single most common mistake that kills winter growth. Mistake number 2. Ignoring microclimates. Even within the same yard, conditions can swing wildly, and winter exaggerates every difference. A few feet can mean the gap between thriving lettuce and frozen lettuce. Ignoring those small variations is one of the easiest ways to lose growth without understanding why. Microclimates form anywhere. Something changes the flow of sun, air, or moisture. Fences and walls block wind and hold warmth. Low spots trap cold air like a bowl. Concrete patios radiate heat long after sunset. Even tree canopies can change everything by catching dew or shading one edge of your garden just long enough to cut the day's sunlight in half. In Florida's flat, open yards, this shows up when a single corner gets hit by frost while the rest of the bed looks untouched. Cold air drains and pools in the lowest areas first, so plants there take the brunt of every cold snap. The simple fix is to keep your most frost-sensitive crops, basil, peppers, or young tomatoes, higher up, near structures that absorb heat during the day. Out west, the same rule works in reverse. California's winter rains and cool nights can keep soil damp for days. Planting next to a south-facing wall helps dry the ground faster and gives tender crops extra warmth. For gardeners in Texas, where cold fronts whip through fast, a fence line can act as both a windbreak and a sun trap, creating ideal microzones for greens or herbs. The key is learning your own backyard's personality. Step outside right after sunrise and again at dusk. Feel where the cold lingers, notice where dew dries first, and mark where the shadows fall. Over time, you'll see patterns that explain which plants struggle and which ones always pull ahead. Every successful winter gardener learns this lesson sooner or later. There's no such thing as a single climate in any garden. The closer you pay attention to those tiny temperature pockets, the fewer surprises you'll have when winter throws a curveball. Mistake number 3: feeding too heavily. When the air cools and plants slow down, it's tempting to grab the fertilizer and give them a boost. But winter growth doesn't work the same way it does in spring or summer. Feeding too heavily this time of year is one of the most common ways to stall your garden instead of helping it. Cool season crops like lettuce, carrots, onions, and beets naturally grow at a slower pace. They're focusing energy on building roots and storing sugars, not chasing fast, leafy growth. Dumping a lot of fertilizer on them, especially anything rich in nitrogen, tricks the plants into producing thin, weak leaves that can't handle chilly nights. The result is soft, brittle growth that burns easily in cold snaps. In Florida's dry winter, that excess fertilizer also builds up in the soil because there's not enough rain to wash it away. Salts collect around the roots, pulling water out of the plant instead of into it. The damage looks a lot like drought stress: limp leaves, brown tips, and stunted growth. Out west, where winter rains keep the ground wet, the problem flips. Nutrients don't build up, they wash away. Gardeners in California often end up feeding again and again, thinking their plants are hungry when they're just cold. Over time, that creates a shallow-rooted, nutrient-dependent garden that collapses as soon as the weather turns warm. The best approach is light and steady. Use compost as your main winter feed. It releases nutrients slowly, without shocking the plants. If something looks pale, apply a weak liquid fertilizer once every few weeks instead of heavy doses. Roots can only absorb what they need, and in cool soil, that isn't much. Winter gardening success depends on patience more than power. Feeding lightly keeps your plants strong, balanced, and ready to surge forward the moment the days start to lengthen. Mistake number 4: letting the soil dry out between cold fronts. Winter in Zone 9 has a rhythm all its own. The temperature swings are wild, a week of mild sunshine followed by a sudden cold front that drops everything 20 degrees overnight. In those warm stretches between cold snaps, the soil quietly dries out. If you only water when it feels hot, your plants go into each cold front already stressed, and that's what kills them. Dry roots lose their ability to pull in warmth from the surrounding soil. When cold air moves in, the ground temperature falls faster and stays low longer. That's why a plant that would normally shrug off a light frost can turn black after one unexpectedly cold night. Moist soil holds heat, acting like a thermal blanket that keeps the root zone stable through temperature swings. In Florida, this is especially important. Our sandy soil drains fast and loses moisture quickly, even when the air feels cool. A deep soak every few days helps anchor the temperature underground and keeps cool season crops growing steadily. Out west, where the soil stays wetter, the key is balance. A thin layer of compost or coarse mulch prevents evaporation without trapping water against the roots. Another overlooked detail is wind. Winter fronts in Texas and Florida often come roaring through with dry air that wicks moisture from the surface. Beds near fences, open fields, or driveways dry twice as fast as protected corners. That's why a quick hand check after each front matters more than a rigid schedule. When the next cold front is on the way, water the garden that morning. Damp soil absorbs sunlight through the day and releases stored heat at night, protecting tender roots from shock. This simple habit can mean the difference between a quick rebound and a bed full of wilted, stunted plants. In winter, water isn't just hydration, it's insulation. Keep that moisture steady, and your garden will sail through cold spells that flatten everyone else's. Mistake number 5. Skipping sun mapping. Winter changes the rules of sunlight. The sun sits lower in the sky. The days are shorter, and shadows stretch twice as far as they did in summer. Ignoring those shifts is one of the easiest ways to stall your garden, even if your soil, water, and fertilizer are all perfectly balanced. Most gardeners assume a sunny summer bed will stay sunny all year, but that same spot can fall into deep shade by December, especially in neighborhoods with fences, sheds, or trees along the southern edge. Crops that thrived in full sun just a few months ago can suddenly find themselves getting barely 4 hours of light. The result is slower growth, thin stems, and plants that look pale even when they're healthy otherwise. In Florida, winter sun angles exaggerate this effect because we're closer to the equator, shadows stretch wider, and the lower humidity means sunlight hits harder wherever it does reach. That makes it crucial to pay attention to which parts of your raised beds stay bright past midday. If you notice a corner going dark, that's the spot to plant greens that tolerate shade, like mustard or spinach, and move sun-loving crops to the open side. In California and Texas, the challenge is similar but often compounded by taller trees and longer winter shadows. A quick walk through your yard at different times of day will tell you more than any garden chart. Mark the sunny patches with a small flag or stake and track how they shift week to week. You'll quickly learn which areas keep enough daylight for steady growth and which ones are best left for spring. Sun mapping doesn't require gadgets or charts, just observation. Once you see how the light moves, you'll know where to plant for consistent photosynthesis even in the shortest months. Winter may cut the day short, but smart placement keeps your garden working full-time. Mistake number 6. Leaving beds unweeded. When the heat dies down, it's easy to stop worrying about weeds. Growth slows, the garden looks tidy, and it feels like nature's finally taking a break. But winter weeds never stop competing, and they do far more damage than most gardeners realize. Leaving them in the bed can cost both warmth and productivity. Even a thin patch of weeds changes how sunlight and air move across the soil. During the day, weeds block light from reaching the surface, keeping the ground cooler than it should be. At night, those same weeds trap a thin layer of cold air close to the soil instead of letting it radiate upward. It's like laying down a sheet of insulation at exactly the wrong time. The soil stays colder for longer and your crops grow slower as a result. Weeds also create uneven moisture levels. Their roots pull water away from shallow crops like lettuce and carrots, leaving dry spots between them. When a cold front moves in, Those dry pockets freeze faster, chilling nearby roots. In Florida's sandy soil, that's enough to shock tender greens or cause tip burn overnight. And even though winter feels bug-free, weeds give early-season pests a perfect hiding place. Aphids and whiteflies cluster on them when nights are too cool for flight, waiting to move on to your crops during the next warm spell. Keeping the beds clean through winter doesn't take much, just a few minutes of pulling each week. The key is consistency. Remove weeds before they flower, and keep the soil surface open so the sun can reach it. If you want to suppress new sprouting without the mess of mulch, try a light dusting of compost instead. It shades the weed seeds just enough to keep them from germinating, while still letting the soil breathe and warm during the day. A clean bed isn't just about looks. It's about sunlight, airflow, and steady temperature. 3 things every winter garden needs to keep growing strong. Mistake number 7. Assuming pests disappear in winter. Winter feels peaceful in the garden. No mosquitoes, no biting flies, no clouds of gnats swarming your face. It's easy to assume the rest of the insect world has gone dormant too. But the quiet season is an illusion. Plenty of garden pests never really leave. They just get better at hiding. Ignoring them through the winter gives them a head start the moment spring arrives. Aphids are the worst offenders. In mild zone 9 winters, they survive right on the undersides of cool season crops like kale, collards, and mustard. The colonies stay small at first, feeding slowly, while nights are cool. But as soon as temperatures rise above 60 degrees for a few days, they explode. By the time you notice curling leaves or sticky residue, they've already drained the energy from the plants. Whiteflies follow the same pattern, tucking themselves under leaves or onto any lingering weeds between the beds. They thrive in sheltered spots near fences or walls that hold daytime heat. Out west, California's long, damp winters encourage fungus gnats and slugs, while Florida's dry air favors aphids and spider mites. Either way, the pests adapt. They never really stop. The key is vigilance. Every few days, check the undersides of leaves and the base of stems. A quick rinse with a spray bottle or garden hose knocks off soft-bodied pests before they multiply. For stubborn infestations, insecticidal soap or neem oil works well during cool weather since evaporation is slower and contact time is longer. Keeping weeds under control also removes their winter shelter. Many pests overwinter in the roots or seed heads of common weeds, waiting for warmth to return. Clean beds break that cycle. Winter doesn't kill everything. It just slows it down. When the garden looks calm, that's the best time to act. A few minutes of preventive care in December and January saves weeks of damage control in spring. Mistake number 8. Not rotating beds. Winter feels like downtime, a chance to rest the garden after a long, growing season. But skipping crop rotation, even in cooler months, quietly builds up the same problems that ruin summer harvests. Diseases, nematodes, and nutrient imbalances don't take a vacation just because the weather's mild. Every plant family leaves its own mark in the soil. Leafy greens pull out nitrogen. Root crops dig deep and change the texture. Members of the nightshade family, like tomatoes and peppers, tend to leave behind specific pathogens that attack their own kind next year. When you replant the same type of crop in the same bed, you're putting it right back into the exact conditions that wore the soil out in the first place. In Florida, where mild winters allow near year-round gardening, it's easy to forget how fast those problems build. Nematodes, especially, thrive in warm, sandy soil and multiply non-stop if their favorite roots stay in one spot too long. The result is stunted, knotted plants that never recover. Out west, winter rains can make it even worse by spreading fungal spores throughout the bed. The solution is simple rotation. Move each plant family to a different bed every season, or at least every other one. Follow heavy feeders with light feeders, for example, plant carrots or onions where summer peppers once grew. Let legumes like beans or peas reclaim depleted soil by fixing nitrogen naturally. If space is limited and you can't rotate much, use containers or grow bags for problem crops. That keeps the soil food web diverse and breaks disease cycles. Even swapping out part of a bed's layout helps, since most pathogens cluster where the roots were last time. Crop rotation is one of those quiet, unglamorous habits that separates consistent harvests from constant struggle. Treat winter as part of the same rhythm, a chance to reset your soil before the busy season returns. Mistake number 9: covering plants the wrong way. When a cold front moves in, most gardeners rush to cover everything in sight. It's a smart instinct, but a lot of those covers end up doing more harm than good. Using the wrong materials or trapping too much moisture can turn a minor chill into major damage overnight. The goal of covering is simple: hold in ground heat and shield plants from frost, forming directly on their leaves. What most people forget is that warmth rises from the soil, not from the air. When you drape a tarp or plastic sheet tightly over the plants and seal it to the ground, you block that warmth from rising. By morning, the trapped humidity condenses and freezes against the leaves, leaving worse frostburn than if you hadn't covered at all. In Florida, where cold nights are short and humidity is high, that trapped moisture is the real enemy. Breathable fabrics, like frost cloth, old bed sheets, or strong row covers, work best. They let excess humidity escape while holding just enough warmth underneath. Always keep the fabric loose so it creates a small air pocket around the plant instead of pressing against it. In California and Texas, where winter nights can be longer and drier, a slightly heavier cover helps retain heat longer. Just make sure the cover extends all the way to the soil on at least one side, forming a skirt that traps radiant warmth. During the day, remove or vent the covers once temperatures rise so the plants don't overheat. Another common mistake is forgetting to anchor the fabric. Even a light breeze can lift it, letting in cold air that settles right on the leaves. Use small clips, clothespins, or even garden stakes to keep it in place. A good cover doesn't need to be fancy. It just needs to breathe. Protecting plants the right way turns a freezing night into nothing more than a small speed bump instead of a total setback. Mistake number 10: ignoring day length. Every gardener knows temperature matters, but light duration matters just as much. The number of daylight hours controls how many crops grow, flower, or produce bulbs, and ignoring that rhythm is one of the most frustrating winter mistakes. Plants read time through sunlight. Some only grow leaves when the days are short. Others wait for longer daylight to start forming roots, bulbs, or fruit. If you plant a long day crop in winter, it won't matter how perfect your soil, water, or fertilizer is. It simply won't move until the light returns. Onions are the classic example. Long day varieties need 14 to 16 hours of daylight to bulb up. In Florida, that doesn't happen until late spring, so those onions just sit there through winter, looking healthy but never forming bulbs. The same goes for garlic and even some flowering vegetables. Short day varieties, on the other hand, thrive during the cooler months when sunlight is limited. They start bulbing or flowering early, long before summer arrives. That's why reading the seed packet is crucial. It tells you which day length range the variety needs. Information most gardeners overlook in favor of hardiness zones. In California, the problem sometimes flips. Gardeners planting short-day onions during the rainy season get strong early growth, but when daylight suddenly stretches in spring, the plants bolt instead of bulbing. Matching the crop's timing to your local light pattern avoids that. This principle goes beyond onions. Strawberries, spinach, and even some herbs respond to day length too. Once you start noticing which plants stall under short days and which keep growing, you'll time every crop better year-round. Winter gardening success depends on more than warmth and water. It's about rhythm, sunlight, temperature, and soil all working together. Master that rhythm, and your Zone 9 garden will keep producing long after everyone else's has gone dormant. Winter can be deceptive. The garden looks peaceful, the weeds slow down, and the bugs go quiet. But beneath the surface, everything is still changing. Most of the problems that ruin spring harvests start right now, during these cooler months, when habits get relaxed and small details go unnoticed. Avoiding the mistakes in this video isn't about perfection, it's about awareness. Once you start noticing how water, light, and soil behave differently in winter, you'll see how easy it is to keep everything growing strong. Cool season crops thrive when conditions stay steady, and Zone 9 gardeners have the rare advantage of growing year-round, if they pay attention. So take a walk through your beds after you finish watching. Feel the soil, check the light, and look closer than you think you need to. The garden will always tell you what it needs. Thanks for watching Ground Truth Gardening. Subscribe for more Zone 9 strategies, raised bed tips, and Florida-tested growing advice that turns seasonal challenges into steady harvests all year long.